Welcome into the Spotrac podcast, brought to you by Bettor Edge, your home for our Spotrac bracket challenge, which, I wouldn't say is going great for yours truly right now, but they got all kinds of competitions. In fact, Mike, I launched a Sweet 16 competition. This because all of our brackets are busted at this point, so we're just picking against the spread for all 8 of these games over at Bettor Edge. You can find that in the competitions tab, and you can set your own lines, bet with your friends, avoid that hold that sports books bake into all of their lines. It's a smart financial thing to do, and you came to a sports financial podcast, so perfect. Sign up for the first time. You get $20 on the house. Just use the promo code SPOTTRACK at sign up. That's bettoredge.com. Like it is Christmas Day for you in many ways. Major League Baseball starts today. This is a sneaky, great. I don't know. Maybe it's not sneaky, but this is a fantastic day in the sports calendar. We've had a few of these over the last couple of weeks, but between the Sweet 16, the start of the Major League Baseball season, I'll be at an NBA game tonight. We got it all covered.
Yeah, why not, right? I kind of don't understand why baseball just didn't start yesterday. maybe avoid having to compete with the Sweet 16 tonight, but it is what it is. And yeah, plenty of options for those of you who like to dabble across the dial later.
I am officially on board at Bettor Edge with every sport that will be played tonight that we just discussed. Not hockey, but
okay.
Well, we'll have a bet at the end of the episode. I'm thinking maybe we'll take a plunge into, well, we could go the Sweet 16 route, but probably Major League Baseball. I love betting baseball totals.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know if you know that about me, but that's one of my go-to things. So we'll talk about that when we wrap up, all presented by Bettor Edge. Big news in the NFL, though. Russell Wilson fills the void at quarterback for the New York Giants. What was your initial reaction to the news, other than the fact that I was right that he was not going to be a $40 million a year quarterback? I had to throw that out.
He's not even a 20. A 1 for 10.5 in terms of the full guarantee, and then a heck of a lot of incentives. So that makes sense. I'm happy to be wrong on this one because this has logic built into it. And I'll say this: I bet that number's higher if the Giants hadn't also signed Jameis Winston. So they kind of took the Pittsburgh model, brought in a 1-2 punch. None of this is going to stop them from doing something next month in the draft. I imagine they'll be as active as humanly possible with one of these, I think, 3 names we've talked about. But from Wilson's standpoint, I'll say this as well. I don't know that this guarantees him the starting job. I don't know why it would, right? I mean, he and Winston are essentially pot committed here at about 8 to 11 million each, and both have their ups and downs, their pros and cons at this stages of their careers. So it's a good move for Wilson. I think that clearly there was some disconnect with him leaving Pittsburgh. Otherwise, it would have been a slam dunk for him to return. He's going to a very offensive-minded coach in Brian Daboll. There is a pretty decent weapon there in Malik Neighbors and a halfway decent offensive line. It's similar to the Pittsburgh breakdown if we kind of go pound for pound like that. So contractually, yeah, lower than expected. I think the Giants did that purposefully by adding more than one arm here. And again, they are still going to be highly active in this draft for the next quarterback of their future because Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are not that.
Yeah, and I'm a little surprised they went with that move because if they are going to go that route at 3, it felt like you already had the stopgap guy in signing Jameis Winston, but I guess that's more of a depth piece, and Russell Wilson would be the one that you bring in the rookie and say, all right, Rook, you got to beat this guy out. Otherwise, we're not going to give you that job. And perhaps it gives Brian Daboll a little bit of security that he doesn't have to tie himself to a rookie if that rookie isn't ready right away.
Yeah, to me, this is also a signal of this, especially because it's Winston and Wilson. The Giants probably now know they can't go up to 1 or 2, right? This feels like a move, especially because of the timing of it, that is telling the rest of the league, Tennessee and Cleveland or somebody at 2 is pretty much going to go 1-2 with this quarterback stuff. So are the Giants going to be able to sneak in for Jackson Dart later? That's probably on their wish list. You know what I mean? A move like that, or maybe a Kyle McCord in round 2 or round 3. And I know a guy that Brian Daboll specifically has ties to, being in the Midwestern state of New York here. those are options, and those options are still available. To me, signing Wilson today versus playing the waiting game like Rodgers and Minnesota and even Pittsburgh is to some degree says, all right, plan A is gone. So let's start to build some depth, build some options, and give ourselves a chance, especially if nothing goes right for us in the draft with the quarterback position. At least now we have these two veterans with experience to fall back on and try to survive 2025, which is what this organization is doing from top to bottom, front office, the coaching staff. They're just trying to survive getting axed on December 31st.
Russell Wilson, in terms of AAV, and it's only a 1-year deal, but he's at 10.5 million. That puts him 22nd in the NFL. So it's an interesting sort of breakdown when you look at the guys that are above him. You have Justin Fields, who just signed that contract with the Jets. You've got the you were a bust, but you proved it kind of guys in the Darnolds, Mayfields, and Geno Smiths of the world. And then the guys that are below Russell Wilson are all rookies. So Russell Wilson at this stage of his career at 36 years old is basically getting the slight bump up from a rookie pay scale.
Yeah, a little bit better than Joe Flacco, right? What Flacco's been able to secure. And the one you kind of left out, which I think is fascinating, is how about Daniel Jones getting 1 for 14, almost fully guaranteed? Again, tough to read tea leaves in March, but that's a tea leaf to me that says Daniel Jones is probably the week 1 starter for Indianapolis. You know what I mean? And that's why I can sit here and say, even though the Giants and Wilson and everybody's probably saying out loud, I'm the guy, Russ is the guy, the money doesn't say that. The money doesn't scream you're the guy week 1 right now, especially because Winston's money is fairly close. So it is fascinating to look at sort of this mid to low tier of potential starting quarterbacks and sort of understand from a guarantee standpoint. I'll give you another sneaky one that I know you weren't prepared to talk about today, but it's juicy. I uncovered the Mac Jones details out in San Francisco. Pretty strong. Guaranteed this year, half guaranteed next year, a bunch of incentives if he plays, if he throws touchdowns, all that good stuff. It's a little Darnoldy in that Mac Jones contract out in San Francisco. And oh, by the way, they're struggling through negotiations with Brock Purdy. So I kind of told you something like this might happen. I even teased Aaron Rodgers at some point in time. And, Mac Jones isn't Aaron Rodgers, and he's not anything close to what Darnold has become over the past 2 years. But Darnold did go through this pipeline to get where he got. And there's no question that from a contract standpoint on the outside looking in, there's a world where Mac Jones can follow in those footsteps to some degree if he's given the opportunity.
What I am hearing is that it would at least be possible that the 49ers say, you know what? We don't really feel comfortable paying Brock Purdy like he is Tua, somewhere in between Tua and Josh Allen. And so we've already moved off of some of our veteran pieces. Hey, we tried this thing for a few years, got to the Super Bowl, didn't work out, and they just start over and they go for the full rebuild mode and move off of guys like McCaffrey and Fred Warner, and they just continue this. If they decide not to keep Brock Purdy or not to extend him, do you think there's a ripple effect of moving off of veterans and going in a different direction?
Well, I mean, you can sort of look at it from a different angle and get to the same endpoint, Brandon, which is McCaffrey's probably only got 1 more year. That's what his guarantees say. But just from a career standpoint, it's going to start to fall off quickly. We've seen that happen with those gadget type players. They just moved on from one, by the way, Debo, who they think is at that point right now, right? Or at least very close to getting to that point and wasn't extension worthy. They're probably struggling with what to do with Kittle, who's on an expiring contract and probably wants to be in the Travis Kelce extension conversation, which is 17, 18 million a year. That's concerning for where they are in terms of their roster. And then Trent Williams could retire tomorrow and none of us would balk at it because he's had injuries. He's had a hell of a career. He's a first ballot, first day Hall of Famer, but he's on the back end of this thing as well. So to say all of this out loud and all the pieces they've already moved on from, and then to drop a $55 to $60 million contract for Brock Purdy, who himself is no slam dunk, as you know, I don't think that's a hot take. It's just a backwards logic. So I wouldn't blame them for anything they're thinking about doing. I'll keep this to the numbers one more time. Let's just say all these pie in the sky things we're talking about here come to fruition, and what San Francisco is doing is actually ripping this Band-Aid off, even though they're sort of not saying that yet. Let's say they don't sign Brock Purdy and they get into a situation where 2025 is actually a competition. Brock Purdy, you can win the starting job and you can further prove that you belong in the top tiered money conversation, but we're not comfortable doing that just yet. Or Mac Jones, you can win this job out of camp, and you can sort of walk down the Darnold path and prove your value going forward. Here's the thing. Brock Purdy's going to be 60 if he has another great season. It's just true, right? I mean, he's already done enough, I think, to warrant a contract. One more season like he's had, especially with a slightly depleted roster, is going to be a lock for him getting top tier money. But that's not Mac Jones, right? If Mac Jones has a nice year as the 49ers quarterback, his ceiling is Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, right? So maybe just intentionally, San Francisco is sort of trying to fill in the blanks with a cheaper option just by having him on the roster, just by having Mac Jones here and hoping maybe he gets this offense for the next couple of seasons. So it'd be interesting, right, that they can pit these two guys who need contracts against each other next offseason if things don't go as planned for the next couple of months here.
So the 49ers you think they can get by without giving Brock Purdy anything this year?
If they have the conversation I just had.
Yeah.
Right? We've got a guy who we think is at least capable of being you in this offense. And his ceiling is $35 million a year going forward. We know what your ceiling is. We know what your asking price is. We're just not willing to meet that price. So our plan B sounds pretty good to us right now. So you can hold out, but it's only going to give him a chance to take your job forever. You know what I mean?
One other thing on the Russell Wilson front, now that you have the two veteran quarterbacks are not on the market anymore, just the one, and Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, that could have filled those starting voids. Does this change Aaron Rodgers' market value now that the competition is drying up?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think it has to. I think now there's at least a model for those other teams to say, look, what happened with the Giants. Cleveland has brought in a couple of bodies. Pittsburgh did bring back Mason Rudolph. So I guess there's a world where they could simply just revert to him. He certainly has experience running that team, at least on an interim basis. And Minnesota is certainly playing the waiting game, and that's obviously still in the cards here, even though they've unofficially cut ties. I'll just say this, maybe another thing that would suppress Aaron Rodgers' total value here. Kirk Cousins isn't going away, Brandon. I know you know that. It does seem imminent that at some point in time, Cleveland acquires Kirk Cousins. That's probably a post 6-1 trade, which is why everybody's saying we're going to wait till after the draft. Now, some of that is Kirk Cousins is hoping that good teams screw this draft up and that somebody ends up needing his services, and then he will certainly waive his no trade clause for that. But I don't think, by the way, that any of these teams are bringing in Kirk Cousins at $37 million. You know what I mean? Atlanta's going to be eating all or a gigantic majority to do this. So there's a lot to that. Kirk Cousins at $5 million or $10 million guaranteed, is only going to make the Russell Wilson number a little bit more clear for what Aaron Rodgers is probably looking to secure here. I still think Rodgers is in the 25 million mark. It just seems right for a player that has his pedigree and, is only like 2 years removed from being a league MVP. So that's essentially what Brady was in Tampa Bay in his twilight years, 25 to 30 on an average basis. That's probably where Rodgers ends up. But yeah, Russell Wilson
sounds
just
like the
secured.
answer is yes, then because he would have been more like 40.
Yeah, it's definitely been suppressed because of what Wilson just secured in New York, no question.
Yeah, interesting. All right, we also had some wide receiver news. The Patriots needed help desperately. They got Stefon Diggs. He makes his way back from an ACL injury in Week 8 of last year, but the Patriots bucked up. 3 years, $69 million, 26 guaranteed. Is this a good deal for both sides here?
It's a good fit for what New England is trying to do quickly with Drake May and all of that. We'll see in terms of what the guarantee structure actually looks like. It feels like it's maybe a 1 for 25-ish, 1 for 26-ish. We'll see if it's even that much. But, he's had 2 significant injuries now. He's getting up there in age. He had a decent look with CJ Stroud there. So there's a model for Drake May using Stefon Diggs, and certainly Josh Allen did his first couple of years before he was able to kind of break through without him. I get it. We've seen Stefon Diggs do this now with a bunch of young quarterbacks, and Drake May is in need of that. But I'm just worried from a health standpoint that this is another one and done situation, and then New England's treading water again for their WR1. Something, my God, when's the last time the Patriots had a legitimate number one wide receiver that you could just count on week in and week out? It's
2007.
Yeah, I mean, Gronk has been that player for a long time, and some would argue that Hunter Henry right now is that guy. He's had a couple of nice seasons sort of under the radar there. So he's got to fill that role. If he can stay healthy, he will fill that role. And boy, New England's had an offseason. Let's put it that way.
By the way, Mike, breaking news here on the Spotrac podcast. I will be at the NFL annual meetings on Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, that's
so if there's anything that you think I need to ask the folks, the higher ups, all the big wigs are in West Palm Beach over the next few days for the owners meetings. They now changed the name to the annual meetings. But if there's anything you think I need to throw out there, just let me know. I'm boots on the ground.
I think the people want to know, is Dak Prescott being traded for Deshaun Watson? No? Isn't that what isn't that the rumor that continues to come back into our lives, even though it is fiscally absolutely unfeasible? But no, don't ask any questions. Just let these guys figure out how to get the kickoff back into the game and get out.
Okay, yeah. I'll let the others. I'll let the Ian Rappaports ask about that. But they give you Roger Goodell access and all of that. You when you're there, you feel like you have to ask something because you're there.
All right.
But we'll see what I come up with. Cam Ward appears to be the guy at number one for the Titans as things begin to crystallize here. He had a great pro day. Assuming that he is the pick, maybe there's a name that we're leaving out of the mix of guys that could be starters, stopgap starters. Will Levis. Yeah. Does he become a guy that's on the move if they end up drafting a quarterback like we all think they're going to?
I don't think so. I don't think he has very good stock, if any stock, right now. He just hasn't shown that he can consistently do anything well on the field right now. So to me, it's more about, will they move on from him? And or will they keep him as a competitive QB2, QB3 option? He's going to have, obviously cheap and the rookie contract on his side, but they haven't really added either, right? I think they brought in Tim Boyle and maybe another option that I'm forgetting about right now, Brandon Allen. Yeah, so there's your potential QB2 with some veteran experience. It seems like this is going to be Cam Ward's team out of the gate. So I'd imagine that an outright release for Will Levis is possible if he wants to sort of catch on somewhere else, even on a practice squad, and go from there. But I think he's in Josh Rosen land right now, Brandon Moore.
I think I froze up on you. I'm back.
Yeah, I'm still rolling here, so we'll just cut that. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Tua's been looking for a backup, so maybe Will Levis finds his way to Miami. We keep trying to we keep trying to find that right guy. Zach Wilson, I guess, right now. Well, imagine that quarterback battle in the preseason. That'd be must-watch TV, Mike.
I think they signed Zach Wilson exactly so that there isn't a quarterback battle, so that they can let Tua sort of breathe a little bit. You know what I mean? He has been. Should he retire? Should he? You know what I mean? He's had so much.
Battle. No, I don't think these guys are pushing Tua, but if you had a Will Levis versus Zach Wilson for who's the backup to Tua kind of battle throughout the preseason,
I mean, you got to bring in Trey Lance then, right, and make it a tripod.
You've been trying to get Trey Lance to Miami for a while now, so I'm definitely behind that. I want to switch gears real quick to the NBA. We found out that there's a salary cap increase to 10%. For the upcoming the next season. The growth in salary cap next season is the maximum allowed and aligns with the projections the NBA sent teams last June. So I guess this was expected, and you've already baked this in to any sort of projections in the offseason?
Yeah, Keith Smith's been dialed into this stuff for a while here, and he's got a pretty good hold on what the projected cap will be for the next couple of years. So most of the projection work he does is based off this 10% increase. And despite the ratings and all the mess and all the hot takes on the shows, this league is super healthy, making a ton of money where it matters, especially internationally. And you're going to continue to see these 10% increases for the indefinite future.
Where do you think the gap lives between the way that the NBA, and you can throw Major League Baseball into this mix as well, the way the leagues are discussed as if everything is falling apart, the product has never been worse, people aren't watching, versus what the reality is behind the dollars that go into these TV contracts that then balloon these salary caps. It feels like the dialogue around these leagues and then the reality financially, there's so much space in between those two conversations.
It's a great question. These arenas are still full, right? These jerseys are still flying off the shelves. So that stuff's that's the easy way to look at this. But in terms of viewership, I think it's mostly about viewership and ratings. And, you can have the conversation about how long baseball and basketball and hockey seasons are versus how impactful every regular season game is for a football game, even though that's starting to dilute a little bit. But I think it's this. Ratings mattered so much when the Doritos commercial was super important, right? When every single ad and every single sponsor in terms of advertising was the lifeline for how these leagues made money. Now that streaming's involved and now that these packages come prepaid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The NBA knows exactly what they're making from NBC for the next 10 years. They already have the check written. It's done. They can spend that cash. They don't really care if you're watching on Thursday night and TNT's commercials are doing well. They just don't. They don't have to care because they've made their money off the TNT package and off the NBC package and ESPN and etc. So their lifeline is already baked into the cake and everything else is just fodder. And a lot of the conversations that happen with this rating stuff is just antiquated, archived, old school. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't matter to these leagues anymore who are printing cash left and right, and players are making $70 million a year because of it. So it's just an old way to look at it. And you're trying to compare generations, just as you do with LeBron versus Jordan, right? Or just as we do with a lot of things that you can't make apples for apples. And we're missing, obviously, gambling. We're missing all the other ways that they're making money to keep these things not only healthy, but thriving year to year.
I mean, it seems like the people that are willing to spend to have these products are not upset with the way that things are going. It seems to me in attending games that fans don't have an issue with the way that these products have lined up the last couple of years. When you go to a baseball game, people are having a blast, spending a bunch of money. I'm at NBA games every other night. I never walk by on the concourse and hear, man, these guys are shooting too many threes. It's just, but if you turn on ESPN, that's exactly what the conversation is. So there is that gap. I think the competition that we have seen over the last couple of years with these streaming services has just shot up the value, because it's not about how much these streaming services can get in terms of ad dollars. No. It is just simply, we have to have a live product. Otherwise, we are going to die and our competition is going to win. And sports is like this never ending buffet of content.
And again, they don't care about that Doritos commercial because you're paying for Amazon. You're paying for Netflix. You're paying for Apple.
And the ads are still important, but that's gravy. That's not the potatoes.
Yeah, one more point, because you brought up the ESPN and some of the other, I think mostly it's the ESPN shows that kind of drive these ratings conversations. Well, they're, almost literally in bed with the NFL. They are in conversations to purchase NFL media and become an actual part owner of the NFL. Their job from midnight to noon is to prop up the NFL as much as possible. So any other shot they can take at the NBA and Major League Baseball, clearly after dumping them, and to some degree, they'll have a hockey conversation before they have an NBA one. Why? Because hockey's on 4 nights a week on ESPN. Okay, and the NFL, they're only growing their packages. They're going to have a Super Bowl in a couple of years. Their job right now is to make the NFL look like the king that it truly is as much as possible. So everyone else is going to take some blind shots every now and then.
Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. I don't know how quick this will be. I guess I'll let you decide that. But I know you've been digging into these MLB payrolls, and we're up to the minute. By the time you're listening to this, perhaps we've already seen first pitch out there across the big leagues. So is there anything that stood out to you in terms of the updated payrolls that we're looking at entering into the start of the season?
Well, injuries are going to be a big conversation, unfortunately. The Yankees are about to send about $100 million to the injured list for opening day. Much thanks to players like Giancarlo Stanton and Garrett Cole. But It's a big conversation that unfortunately happens a lot annually this time of year, especially with the cold weather games and things like that. But it is a marathon of a season, so I'm not gonna go down that hole too much. The only conversation that matters is the top here, right? I mean, you know who's going to be at the bottom of these payrolls. It's Tampa, it's Pittsburgh, it's the White Sox, and it's the Marlins, somewhat historically right now, by the way. You want to talk about ripping a Band-Aid off. The Marlins are writing the book on how to do that in terms of their front office. But what the Dodgers have done, obviously everybody knows it at this point, they're not done. That's the point I'm going to make. They're not done. Okay, so we're going to have them approaching 400 million in terms of a tax payroll to start this season. It's going to mean about 200 million of a tax bill. So this is going to be about a $600 million season for them, all pot committed. And they're going to make moves. They've already got 11 players on the injured list. They're going to make more moves now at the deadline before the postseason to ramp up this team and make it even deeper and bigger and stronger. So will the Mets. So will the Phillies. And I think so will the Yankees, as long as the wheels don't fall off completely after a really tough start here. But those are your top, near 300 to near $400 million teams to start the year. And the gap is gigantic. You know what I mean? I'm about to firm up some of these numbers, but it looks like it's going to be between 475 million in terms of number 1 and number 30 heading into 2025.
Is that the biggest? Would that be the biggest gap in the history of baseball?
Yeah, we have a lot of teams that have lived under 100 million, obviously over the years as things were less and less. But the Dodgers getting to 400 million really changes this, and the conversation has been somewhat monotonous about them, but it's pretty realistic. That what they're doing right now and their use of deferrals and all that stuff to get to this point. It has widened the gap bigger than any league that exists. There's no question about that. I mean, you just can't say it any other way. And the calls for the salary cap are fine, but it's not going to help the bottom. It's all that's going to do is justify the bottom being the bottom. So I just think that more than one rule needs to be in place if you want to bridge this gap. But I'll beg the question back to you. I'm not sure baseball wants to bridge this gap. I think they'd love how much the Dodgers have been talked about, and the Mets and Juan Soto and the Yankees, and how they may be $300 million and not make the playoffs. I think baseball loves this, and I don't really blame them because they need any publicity right now to keep them going.
I don't think a cap is the issue. I think a floor is the issue. These teams should have to spend a certain amount of money.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I said it with Dan Soman a couple of weeks ago, but players didn't choose the Dodgers because the Dodgers offered the most money. They chose the Dodgers because they're the best team in baseball, and LA's a great time to play baseball in July and August, right? There's a lot of factors, and they've all got it going for them. But, it's not like teams like Baltimore or Toronto or Cincinnati, even St. Louis and Minnesota, who are near the bottom here. It's not like they didn't try to sign these players. They probably did. They just went to better teams. They went to the Mets, who were loading up. They went to the Dodgers, who have certainly been loading up for years and years and years. When you force the Athletics to pay, though, they paid. And they're going to force the Marlins to pay here at some point in time. And they're going to pay. So I'm with you. Some sort of rule needs to be in place. And there is a loose rule that they've kind of come in and said, you have to start spending now or else, the revenue sharing is going to go away. Just make it a formal thing. Make it an annual thing that something has to be done every single year to wet the noodle a little bit, and then make it a 3-year spending and then a 5-year spending. And most leagues have this. So I agree. Let's stop talking about the top and let's start bringing the bottom up to a little bit.
Absolutely. I think that's the bigger issue. We've had dynasties in sports. It's great for all these sports leagues. The Dodgers being good. Yeah, they're the favorites. They should be, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And it's good for all of us who are not Dodgers fans to have something to root against. Having teams like the White Sox and the Marlins exist that have zero chance to do anything and that will probably waltz to 100 losses it's bad for the game of baseball.
Did you see the win total? Did you see the number on the White Sox?
The win total is probably in the 50s.
The Dodgers are 105.5, according to FanDuel. White Sox are 54.5. Yeah. It's a 51 win gap right now between the biggest contender and the biggest non-contender in baseball.
I think I would take the over, by the way.
But on the White Sox?
I mean, you can win 55 by accident in baseball.
I don't know. I've been doing a heck of a lot of roster work here, and I love this game. I couldn't name you 6 of the 9 starters that are going to play tomorrow. I couldn't name them. I couldn't do it. And I've already looked once, and I still don't remember them.
Yeah. Let me be clear also, there wasn't a recommendation out there for you to take the over. I'm just saying if I was forced to bet one side or the other, that's a ridiculously low total.
Let me ask you this. Would you rather have the over on Chicago or the under on the Dodgers?
I love that question. I think I'd rather have the over on the Dodgers.
The over on the Dodgers?
Yeah.
You think they're
over on the Dodgers or under on the White Sox? That was
So you want to go 106 on the Dodgers?
Yeah. I mean,
wow,
they underperformed last year, and they were in the 90s. So,
yeah. All right,
they wouldn't take much, especially with Ohtani now starting to enter that rotation, and they beefed up. They were injured at the end of last year.
Yeah.
I would, that's going to be a sweat till the end. But if I had to choose, I'm not a baseball totals guy though. I like game totals. Season, I can't wait the whole year for a payout. I don't have that kind of patience. I would really like the Red Sox to win the AL East, and that was at plus 325. I think that's been smashed by a few smart baseball people, and it's in like the 200s now. I still can't do it. I cannot take the plunge on a baseball futures bet. The season's too long. It's too much that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, just day to day. Have fun with it day to day. It's way better that way. That's the beauty of a long season and something you have to root for every single night. That's why I really enjoy this stuff. So I do.
Yeah.
I will wait till the 4th inning when the Mets are down 3-0 and blindly bet them to come back and win. Often, dozens of times throughout the year.
Look up who the worst bullpens are, and then that will be your live betting food. I saw Rams receiver Puka Nacua say that he wants to retire by the age of 30. He's 23 right now, so this isn't an issue yet. But could a comment like this ever come back to bite him in terms of contract negotiations?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a weird comment to make. You know what I mean? The comment I hear a lot from athletes and former athletes is once you start thinking about retirement, you've already done a disservice to yourself mentally. So the fact that he's 24 and thinking about what he's going to do in 6 years in terms of the end of his career is a little bit awkward. But I guess if I'm thinking about it contractually, he can extend after 2025, and he probably will. He'll probably be the guy in Los Angeles. Let's say it's a 3-year guarantee. That makes him 28. So he probably gets one more multi-year guarantee at that point if he can still play ball at a high level. And then, so it's reasonable. You get a rookie contract and then 2 good multi-year guarantees and get the heck out of town. That's not a crazy thing to actually get down to. But yeah, I guess when you're talking about that 3rd contract, if that's still something that he's considering, then certainly Les Snead and the Rams can use that to make sure year 3's got no guarantees at all, because that'll be his age 31 season.
If I'm a GM around the league and all these guys are going on podcasts now and sharing way too much information,
you're not wrong.
I would be writing all this stuff down, jotting little notes to myself about what these players say and how they project the rest of their careers to go. Yeah, I could soapbox players, and we're on a podcast. I'm on like 4 other podcasts. I am not an anti-podcast guy. But for players that are active, I don't know what.
Yeah,
it doesn't serve you any good. Let's spend a whole other podcast on that. All right, let's wrap with our Bettor Edge head-to-head bet of the week. We'll send this to you once we are done recording here. We have a buffet to choose from. I figure we start in baseball because we haven't made a baseball bet yet. It is opening day as of this recording. Your Mets are taking on the Astros. My Orioles going head-to-head with the division rival Blue Jays. Is there anything that you are looking at that I can perhaps argue with you, against you on the other side?
Let me just throw this at you because I'm intrigued if Bettor Edge can do this. Can we bet player home runs in Bettor Edge?
I have not tried that yet.
Okay, let's make it some homework.
Okay,
I've got you might know this stat because I know you dive into the research stuff a lot. Do you know there's a player who has homered in 5 straight opening days in Major League Baseball right now?
Is it Aaron Judge?
It is Tyler O'Neill.
Oh, okay.
Tyler O'Neill. Okay, somebody I believe you're going to have to be watching quite a bit for your Orioles this year. He has homered 5 straight opening days. Do you want to take action that he will homer again in 6 straight opening days for your Baltimore Orioles?
I would not. I would be on the other side of that.
You think it's a no?
I think it would be a no.
So 5 times in a row, is it good enough for you?
Well, it just, I mean, he's
it's
due.
An incredible
for a letdown
stat.
here.
It's an incredible stat.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
I'll
see if I can find that. We'll go head to head. I'll say no. You'll say yes.
I'll say yes.
And if not, I'll just throw the O's Blue Jays game at you.
I'll take the Blue Jays.
All right, perfect.
I'll take the Blue Jays.
I'm up, by the way, on the lifelong series. With we haven't made a head-to-head bet in a couple of weeks, but I'm up 4-3. I'm keeping records of this stuff. This episode has been presented by Bettor Edge. Sign up, give it a shot, bet with your friends, bet with us, and use the promo code Spotrac over at bettoredge.com or on the mobile app. You get $20 at sign up if you've never used it before by using that promo code. Do us a favor and subscribe and rate the pod that you're enjoying right now. Make sure you visit Spotrac.com for all of the latest in the sports contractual world. Enjoy opening day, Mike.
Go Mets.